Hello, devoted and downtrodden, and welcome back to They Came From Below. Tom, very lowest of men here, back once again for some GSC content on 6++. Now, I had a request from one of our YouTube members to do an in-depth guide of the GSC units. Fortunately, it's not a huge book, mostly characters, and I'm very happy after a lot of games of GSC in the last few months, a lot of success with the army, to have a lot of insights into how to use them, different detachments they sing in, little things to remember about each unit to really help you get your teeth into the army if you're starting out or trying to level up your game with the faction. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Thank you very much for supporting us. Please do hit like, subscribe. Please do leave us a comment. If you're not already a member of 6++ supporting us on YouTube, we'd love to have you. Got a huge, thriving Discord, all sorts of members-only content, and access to coaching there as well. So if you want to learn how to play the Genestealer cults, I'd be very happy to work with you. So we're going to roll through it. I think we'll start with the characters. I'm rolling down through Wikipedia here, going through in depth on the profiles and their uses. I think we get the characters so we know all the kind of extra add-ons and layers and buffs, and then we'll get into the meat of the army, the units, to finish up. And we are starting with one of my very favorites. It's the Abominant, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the Abominant is a fantastic unit in GSC at this moment in time. He has basically a las cannon that he's swinging around at strength 12, AP2, damage D6 +1. So he's got a tank cracking hammer or an elite infantry killing hammer. He is relatively tough, T6, 5 wounds, 5 up, feel no pain. And crucially, the first time he dies, he gets back up on a 2+. So there's some real use for that as well. It's worth saying he pairs really well with Aberrants, where he gives Aberrants a 4-up fight on death. So gives you a very stodgy, tough unit, lots of feel no pain wounds to chew through. There's also killing you back even as you engage with it. Now, the Abominant is a swingy beast, but a very effective one in 2 of the GSC detachments in particular. He's very good in Biosanctic Brood Surge, and he's very good in Final Day. What both of those do is help him be a bit more consistent. In Brood Surge, he gets an extra attack. You can get access to +1 to wound against monsters and vehicles. In Final Day, he can be hitting on 2s, and there's an enhancement to give him sustain. So the key thing here is that those 4 attacks, which can be quite swingy with hitting on 3s, suddenly become much more consistent. So those are the 2 detachments that he's best in, but you 100% can play him in other ones as well. Ultimately, a model that gets back up on a 2-up is a real problem for the opponent. It creates a sort of multi-phase trap. He's very good into armies that only fight or only shoot, because you've got a very real chance of getting 2 uses out of him in a game. And the key to using him into other armies is avoiding getting him into situations where he can be very easily double tapped, that is, killed in shooting, then killed in combat. So he works well along the flanks, I find, pushing aside, so it's hard for the opponent to focus down the Aberrants, kill him, and then kill him again. He's definitely at his least effective into armies that find it trivial to kill the Aberrants he's with, kill him, and then kill him again in combat. So that's where you want to be careful, and you'll get the least value if you push him too soon into armies that have very good shooting and combat ways to go through him in multiple phases. The Abominant loves killing elite infantry with that strength 12. He loves killing tanks, and the key is to get him either deliver him through a rapid ingress or a deep strike boosted charge in Brood Surge, or use potentially a Goliath truck to deliver a 10 brick of Aberrants, or a Rock Grinder to deliver a 5 brick. Aberrants are very good for pushing one of the sides of the board, securing a flank, and then pushing on up to threaten the opponent. The Abominant is definitely the best single character for leading Aberrants, although you do pay a lot of points for him these days. He's got a lot more expensive, so it's hard to cram lots of them into a list unless you're going all in on Aberrants with Brood Surge. They are expensive. You do pay a premium for them. Next up, we have the Acolyte Icon Ward. Now, I've seen this popping up in lists a fair bit, and he is a deceptive little guy because he's got a lot of value as a sort of stodgy piece. Now, the Icon Ward gets the most buffs in Xenocreed, but generally, the most effective use of him is to buff up the feel no pain of a unit. He can give either a 4-up to Metamorphs or a 5-up to Neophytes. Now, I really like the Acolyte Icon Ward in a 20 brick of Neophytes to give them a 5-up feel no pain on a unit that has an innate D3+3 regen on objectives. You'll see a lot of armies now shoving a tough 20-man of guys onto a point to force the opponent to engage them, whether that's Death Courts of Krieg or Orc Boys in the new Mordaka detachment. And you can do a little bit of this yourself with the Neophytes. It gives you a very solid holding piece, 40 OC that regenerates, or you can bait the opponent by putting out 1 or 2 Neophytes. They know if they don't kill it, you're growing back onto the point. This all helps to draw the opponent out for your guns to get to work on. So I've seen this work as a plugin in a whole range of detachments. It's not too expensive. He's only 50 points. So the whole package is less than 200. He does work with Metamorphs where the Scout combines, so he can get a Scout move alongside the Metamorphs. I think the 4-up Feel No Pain Doesn't tend to go far enough on the 10 wounds if they really get in trouble. But I think there's definitely application for him with Metamorphs in Xeno Creed, where that durability boost, helping them get their blood surge off and into combat with something, definitely does application. Now, he's more of a flex pick. I've not seen him taking tons, but what I would say is, yeah, it's well worth exploring either the 10 brick of metas with him in or the 20 brick of neophytes. Those are his two best use cases. And it's to give you a little bit of a tar pit, a little bit of staying power, which is going to draw more of a commitment from the opponent for you to then respond to. Next up, we have the Benefactors. Wow, so I've been dabbling in the Benefactors recently, and I have to say, I've been pleasantly surprised. What you get with the Benefactors is a couple of mini las cannon shots, risking the overcharge, and you also get lethal hits for the unit she is leading. She's got a once per game 4-up invulnerable save. Doesn't really matter very much. Doesn't tend to help her very much. But the las cannon shots are really valuable. You know, GSC can already put quite a lot of good mining laser shots on the board through the Ridge Runners, through the Goliath Rock Grinders, through the Neophytes. So getting more of those into a list is great. She's particularly good in Host of Ascension, where you can get crit 5s, pop a strat, everything is lethal hits on 5s. Really, really powerful there. I've also seen her used as a cheeky additional sniper shooting out of a Goliath rock grinder. So if you have a laser rock grinder, you're rolling that up, she's inside it. That's 2 additional laser shots alongside the D3 blast coming off the rock grinder, which means that dealing with that thing is a lot more important. That is suddenly much more capable of taking on and soloing tanks on its own, and much more worthy of respect from the opponent. And then later on, she can hop out, do actions, additional things on her own as well. Benefactors can also work really nicely with Acolytes, with demo charges dropping down in sort of a Host of Ascension with 6-inch deep strike as well to cause mayhem. So flexible, very cheap at 70. You tend to see like one Primus taken and then Benefactors after that. Definitely a really cool character. Just watch out for her blowing her own brain out when she overcharges on her las cannon, because it happens to me most of the time. If you're building a ranged, hard target cracking GSC list, very, very useful character to have. Next up, we have the Biophagus. This is a favorite of mine. Now, the Biophagus, one of the main things he has going for him is that he's cheap. He is 50 points. It gives you another leader for Aberrant if you don't want to pay out points for an Abominant. And the crucial things with the Biophagus is he gives the unit lethal hits. Again, very spicy if comboed with crit 5s in Host of Ascension to give those Aberrants auto wounding on 5s. He also gives once per game +1 to wound against infantry, which again helps Strength 7 Aberrants suddenly punch through all sorts of hard targets. And he also himself has a very fun once per game go turn with his injector where he goes to D3 +3 damage. You're going to need a Ridge Runner to stack extra AP on because the weapon itself doesn't have any AP, and prepare to be endlessly disappointed when your opponent rolls 3-up and 4-up saves and stops him killing things. But every once in a while, he's going to accidentally kill a tank with some lethal hits, and you're going to have a giggle. So the Biophagus is a fantastic unit. I really like him leading Aberrants. He works very well leading Metamorphs or Melee Acolytes as well. We'll come to those a little bit later. And crucially, yeah, he's a very cheap price point, so he's a nice, easy plug-in that carries all sorts of buffs really, really nicely. Next up, we have the Clamavus. So the Clamavus is a funny tech piece. You can see the case for him. He screens out 12-inch reserves. He can battle shock something in your command phase within 18. These are both nice little buffs to have. I think the reality with the Clamavus is that there are a lot of better spends for 50 points. GSC have a lot of trash. They can screen the board out just fine if they want to. Battle shocking with no buffs is a casino. You are very unlikely to succeed against a wide range of different armies. If you're building around battle shock, you're building other things in with Kelemorphs, potentially the Patriarch, it might be worth it to try and get multiple goes to shock a unit. But I think you have to regard that as a maybe rather than a game plan, right? And ultimately, he doesn't bring enough to the units you'd plug him into, Acolytes, Neophytes, Hybrids, etc., to really make it worth it when there's other things that actually amp up their damage and effect, or durability, for example, that you could be plugging them into. So for me, the Clamavus is cool. You can definitely get use of him. In a meta where there's a lot of 6-inch deep strikers, he might have a role. But my instinct is typically just get good at screening with your huge, massive GSC bodies first, and then see if you really need him. And Battle Shock builds for GSC are a recipe for frustration. So enjoy that if you try it, and all the very best luck to you. Okie dokie, moving it along, we have the Jackal Alphas. Now, the Jackal Alphas is a nice little scout moving leader for the Atalan Jackals. Gives reroll hits after it's hit a thing in the shooting phase, and it also has a fire and fade for its unit. Now, there is application for the Jackal Alphas. I've seen it used in Host of Ascension to help units get reroll 1s to hit. I have seen it used in Outlander Claw to help Jackal units, sticky things, shoot things, fire and fade back out of trouble, or fire and fade forwards to put a much bigger block on the opponent. And I can see a case for it in Final Day, especially for Ridge Runners, where you're going to be buffing them up with the Tyrannid boosts to hit on 2s. So if you want to go all the way and hit on 2s rerolling 1s, the Jackal Alphys is your friend. So a nice little plug in there, could be doing actions, hopping in and out, causing problems. I think the Fire and Fade's less effective on a mounted unit than an infantry one, inevitably. They do have grenades, so Jackal bombs with the Jackal Alphys are quite fun, especially good into Eldar, where they drive up, do a bunch of grenades, damage with their own rule, throw grenades, cause havoc. So there definitely is play for the Jackal Alphys, but it's more of a cute plugin. But I think if you're building around bikes and adding bikes into your game plan, if you have that spare 55 points, the Jackal Alphys is a very nice take. We're moving it along to the Kelermorph. Now, the Kelermorph was very much in demand, but has dropped off a little bit. Kelermorph forces a battle shot when it shoots its opponent, and it can also make a normal move and shoot when an opponent moves within 9. Now, this is less effective than it was. It used to be 12, it's been nerfed to 9, which means it's very possible to walk up within 12 of a Kelermorph, not trigger its reactive move and shoot and kill it. The shooting is still solid in and of itself. The battle shock is still a nice thing to have, but not an essential thing to have, and the output is okay. I think in a sort of Outlander Claw build where you're building on lots and lots of chip damage, the Kelermorph isn't terrible, but I think the nerf has hurt him. The fact that you can engage him without triggering the shooting definitely restricts his outs and his uses. So for me, that's why the Kelermorph has dropped off, and I would much prefer something like the Saboteur, where the consequences, frankly, for moving near it are also much greater. But certainly, I know Innis and Eric Lathuris have got real good use out of Kelermorphs in sort of combination death by 1,000 cuts type Outlander lists, and you can probably see him in there as well. Taking it on, we have the Locust. So the Locust is a unit I have dabbled around with. It gives a unit fights first, and he has himself a reasonable number of strength 5, AP2 damage 2 attacks. Now, I think the Locust is probably best in Final Day, where rerolls to wound takes him and the unit he's plugged into up. So a Metamorph unit with a Locust is no joke, right? Hitting on 2s, rerolling all their wounds, coming in at strength 5. That's going to blend through a lot of infantry type targets, still struggles into the high toughness vehicles. I think the interesting thing with fights first for GSC is that a lot of the time I feel like you're already playing a very deliberate game of making sure you get your hits in first. You're not really absorbing and inviting pressure, you are creating pressure, which means that a fights first trap is slightly less powerful here because you don't really want to be inviting the opponent onto you too much. That said, it's a powerful thing, and combined with a powerful melee unit in the right areas where you can get the right buffs on it, I think it's not without its uses. For me personally, the Locust, again, is competing with a lot of characters that are coming in at a similar price point, and it tends to be that I'd rather have something else that someone else offers than fights first on a unit that I'm probably planning on throwing at the opponent anyway, getting killed, recycling, throwing it again. Next up, it is the Magus. Now, I'm going to just have a little pour one out for the Magus. I love the Magus model. I absolutely love the role of the Magus in the lore. The function of the Magus has dropped right off. It can unbattle shock a GSC unit once per battle at the start of any phase. That's not terrible. It has a make an opponent -1 to hit or -1 to wound psychic power ability in the opponent's shooting phase. Again, it's not terrible. And it has a psychic familiar to increase the range of its mind control ability once per game. Outside of that, it's not doing anything. So you've got a 2-up success ability that mildly reduces enemy capacity. You have an unbattle shock for units that tend to die, rather than still be alive and need to take battle shock. My overall feeling is that with the Magus, the rules are just out of sync with how the army really plays, right? I think GSC units get blown over regardless of what debuffs you pop on the opponent's attacks. You're very fragile, you're going to die anyway. GSC units tend to die to the man, so battle shocking doesn't happen much. It would have application into, say, Tyranids, with Shadow in the Warp being able to protect your primary. It can definitely protect primary at some moment in a game, but with GSC, you're typically playing blocking and pressuring to protect your primary, most importantly. Shouldn't really get to the point where there's opponents on objectives. If you have, it's already unraveling a little bit. And again, the Magus is just competing with a bunch of units that, for me, do other things I want more to amp up damage, amp up mission play, amp up durability that genuinely matter. And it's just doesn't get there. And again, not dangerous herself in any way. That's a Psycho with just no output whatsoever, which is a real shame. So pull one out. Hopefully next edition, the Magus will get back in the game. Taking it down now, we have the Nexos. Now, this was a little terror at the start of the edition. Not quite so much now. He gives you a free CP use and once per battle round, and he can also move a cult ambush marker 6 inches. Now, the reality is cult ambush markers moving matters a lot less now that we return via deep strike, so you don't really need it. The free strat thing is okay, and there's definitely a case for it, but because it's wedded to the unit it's targeted with, there are only certain detachments where you really need it. It can be good in Host of Ascension because he likes to go with neophytes, right? So you might get multiple turns out of a shooty brick that's actually buffing the strat. That's probably the best use case for the Nexus. But then in general, the reality is you take Acolytes with melee tools if you want more CP, and you just are careful with your CP management. And then a lot of the units and a lot of the detachments are simply not going to be anywhere near a Nexus to benefit from this in the first place. So he's another beautiful model that I love very much. Was really good in the Index era. Has definitely dropped off in his effectiveness right now. If you are going to use him, an uppy, downeying Brick of Neophytes is definitely the way. So maybe in Final Day, maybe in Host of Ascension. Moving it along, we have one of my absolute favourites, the Patriarch. So the Patriarch is a melee blender. He actually works in a whole bunch of detachments. He's got 5 nice twin-link dev wound attacks, so he's very reliably putting 2 or 4 mortal wounds through a target. He gives his entire unit of Pure Strange, and you can run him with a 10 or a 5 devastating wounds, so that helps get even more hard target removal out. In the fight phase, everything within 6 of him has to take a battle shock, and you can buff it once per game to everything within 12. So this is because this is an AoE effect, and because this happens in the start of the fight phase, both the opponent's and yours, you get a lot of opportunities to set this off, which means actually your opponent's chances of failing a key battle shock at some stage in the turn or two he's on the board, and he doesn't live long, is much, much higher. So the key to getting the use out of it is jamming him at an important moment, getting a bunch of battle shocks out in your turn, and if he can scrap and survive until the opponent's fight phase the next time, gets another wave of battle shocks, which you can then capitalize in your subsequent turn. That's the way to get the most out of him. Again, like the Aberrants, he works better on the flanks in isolated areas so that he's less likely to get completely totaled in reply, and you will lose the opportunity to make use of the battle shock. The Dev Wounds with the 10 mana Pure Strains is no joke, especially good in Brood Surge, where you can have 50 attacks, or in Final Day, where you can get full rerolls to wound on those Dev Wounds as well. Now, that is really, really nice. I've been loving that unit lately with an enhancement for no Overwatch. Mwah, that is chef's kiss. Highly recommend it. But yeah, definitely the upgrade to give him higher strength and damage 3 in Brood Surge is also really legit. Now, in Host of Ascension, I've actually really enjoyed the Patriarch as a unit that you use for early pressure, again, bullying an edge, picking on a flank, and if the opponent doesn't kill the whole brick in an activation, you can pick it up in the sky with Return to Shadows, bring him back in, and try again later. I think he has a lot of application like that. You just, again, have to be careful to not put him into fights where that whole unit's going to get completely killed in a single activation in shooting. So he has application across a range of different detachments. 40 attacks with Dev Wounds and 5 attacks with Dev Wounds 2 is just good. That's just an awesome thing to have, and it helps you push through certain targets that some of the other weapons struggle with. And the battle shocking effect on the Patriarch is also really good. So I'd say this is one of the additions where the Patriarch feels like he's in a really good spot. Just a shame you can only have one, really. Imagine the mayhem you could cause with 3. If you are taking him with a 10-man, depending on the meta, you might want him in a Goliath truck. You may want to rapid ingress him to pick a good fight for him to get on the board with his deep strike. I've also had fun in Brood Surge running him in a 5-man in a truck, so you can have him as one missile because he's got the damage 3, so he's a bit killier, and you can then have another 5-man of something else in the truck as well to be very efficient with your transport space. He's quick, just make sure he makes it in, because otherwise it's a real waste of points. Next up, we have the Primus. So the Primus has dropped off a bit, but is still very useful. It gives you full rerolls to hit, gives you a redeploy. So the nice things you can do with the Primus is you can use then a 10 brick of Pure Strains with the Patriarch to just screen out the entire midboard if you get first drop, knowing if you go second, you can just redeploy them anyway with the Primus. So it's not an issue. Well, you redeploy before that you know who's going to first and second, but the same rule applies. Stop their infiltrators, then get yours to safety. Jobs are good. The reroll the hits is really, really good on either neophytes or on, say, melee acolytes. He can combo with other characters, which means you can get lethal hits for rerolls in melee. I find that package tends to just be too expensive for what it does. The advantage of him in a neophyte brick, and he's especially good in Host of Ascension with a chink in their armor to get extra buffs for damage. If you use him there, You play him again, and this is a running theme with the GSC heavy hitters. If you play the edges carefully with him to get multiple activations out of him, when the opponent shoots, if they don't kill the brick, you take it up in reserves again, bring it down, shoot somewhere else. That's how you get the most joy out of a Primus, and you tend to see only one taken at the moment in Host of Ascension lists. He is quite fun with the sustained hits enhancement in Final Day, where you can again get a little bit of that same drop neophyte, roll shots, sustained hits vibes, and put a bunch of damage on things. The thing with neophytes in general is they're a bit of a mixed profile. It's not quite clear what it is they're supposed to be consistently hurting because they have so many different guns. We'll get to that in a moment, which is why I think people like the Benefactors, because at least then you know there's 4 mining laser type shots in there. You're not relying on sustained and rerolls to get up to those kinds of numbers. Still very useful. The redeploy is really nice. I always find I add one in and then I just cut it because I just can't quite justify him when points are at a premium as they are these days for GSC. But that's just the way of it. Moving it along, we must nearly be through the characters now, right? It's the Reductus Saboteur. This is one of my favorite units. I absolutely love the Reductus Saboteur. Very, very effective. Free grenade strat is just nice to have, kicking about. A unit ending a move within 9 of her can on a 2-up suffer D3+3 mortals. Fantastic into elves, and especially at the moment, out of phase elf movement can and does trigger this, so you can use it to hurt units that are trying to get you with battle focus or with lethal intent. She has a demo charge, which is very nice as well. And she also has remote explosives, so a smattering of indirect at strength 5, damage 1. Now, we'll talk about it later, but there are sort of GSC builds that do go hard on indirect as their backfield option that just cleans out all the chaff, and the Saboteur is one way of doing this as well. Having free grenade is nice. It just pushes that extra bit of damage through without costing you additional CP. I really like the Saboteur riding in a rock grinder, popping out when the moment's right, but if not, just happily firing away from inside the truck. Very, very effective unit, and one of our lone ops, which means that it's very nice for doing cards and scoring if you end up in a situation where she's not being used in the battle. Next up, we have another lone up of renown, which is the Sanctus. I've seen this used 2 different ways, and shout out to Sam Parker-Hully, who runs both in his GSC list. He can be run with the dagger, which makes him an infantry killer. He can kill through a 5-man of scouts reasonably happily because he can pick one target at the start of the game for full rerolls to hit and wound against. I love him. He's really, really good for that. He also can't be overwatched when he's using the dagger. Just gives him a nice, easy reach into opponents. Also gives you an action doer that can't be stopped. If you want to pop out and do containment or do area denial, they can't just flame him away. If you have the sniper rifle, what you get instead is a reactive move of 6 when the opponent comes within 9. So I see that very commonly used as an action doer in the middle, right? You pop out, do the cards, the opponent comes to deal with you, you run away. It was a bit like the Lieutenant with the combi weapon. Really effective as a little mid-board action doer, beta, teaser, skirmisher. But the rifle doesn't do anything damage-wise, so don't be expecting anything particularly exciting from the sniper rifle for damage. Just enjoy that reactive move. For me, I prefer the bio dagger. I like him to kill things. It's funny when he punches up into a squad of legionnaires or something, he just kills them all. And he has to be respected whilst also being a 50-point lone op, which is pretty fun. A lot of my Brood Surge lists use 2 of these, and I think 2 of these into a lot of the meta is a very nice pick because they just go and tangle with trading units twice their cost. They can do early actions, and they can't be overwatched, which just forces the opponent to actually come out and play the game. Next up, we're doing it, guys. It's the units now. So let's talk through the units. You've got a sense of the characters. We've got a mix of buffing characters. We've got a mix of lone ops. That's a good suite of tools. So let's talk about how we complement them. First up, it is the Acolyte Hybrids with auto pistols. This is a lovely little combat unit or a utility unit. They give you a 4-up chance to get a command point at the start of your command phase. This is nice. So you'll often see 5 of them just babysitting a back objective, putting 10 OC on there, helping you get CP. They have an icon, so they can bring back up to D3 if not on an objective, or 3 if you are, and one-shot weapons are considered to have been shot regardless. The key for these guys is in their melee weapons, right? They have the heavy mining tool, which is anti-vehicle 4-up, damage 3, AP2. Now, in Brood Surge, where you get an additional attack if you're led by the Biophagus, this takes you up to a unit that can have 6 of these, coming in at 18 attacks with lethals, potentially +1 to wound against monsters and vehicles, or just anti-vehicle 4-up, or from the Biophagus +1 to wound against infantry. All of these things equal a lot of damage 3 going through a target. People are endlessly surprised by the amount of damage this unit puts out. It's a very cheap brick as well, 130 for 10, and obviously the potential to res them, although they're not very effective on the second go. But a Biophagus unit with these in Brood Surge absolutely slaps, can kill through Possessed, can kill through tanks, can kill through monsters. Very, very effective. It's also 20 OC with an icon that regens. The opponent has to deal with it very fast. There's a bunch of other attacks in here as well, which if you have the Biophagus, which is what I'd recommend, gets the lethal hits through as well. So yeah, in Brood Surge in particular, the melee Acolyte 10-man brick, really, really nice. Elsewhere, you tend to just see the 5-mans for CP farming. Taking it along, we have one of the best units in the entire book, the Acolytes with Hand Flamers, sometimes referred to as the Flacos. So for the Acolytes with Hand Flamers, they are like rubrics, but spikier and cheaper. They have full rerolls to wound if the opponent's on an objective, or just reroll of wound rolls of 1 all the time. You take them with Hand Flamers, that's a bunch of rerolling wounds, which puts a bunch of ignores cover wounds on a target. If you've comboed them with a Ridge Runner, which we'll get to later, that's AP1 ignores cover, just chip damage, which you can push through almost anything with the rerolls. You can take 10-mans with the demo charges. I've seen this done in Host of Ascension where the 6-inch Deep Strike is relevant. I don't see it done anywhere else at the moment. The reroll wounds also applies in combat, so this little unit can run out, flame things, well, grenade things first, flame things, charge things, reroll wounds. You'll be pleasantly surprised at how much damage this can push through almost anything on an objective, especially if a Ridge Runner's comboed with it. OC 10, very obnoxious. You can take them with an icon, and a lot of people do this. And the key to taking an icon in this unit, you'd think, well, you're only going to get a couple back. They're very likely to die. Because of the way Cult Ambush works and Resurrection works, you want the opponent to kill these. And so by putting these on objectives with icons, you kind of force that because it's 10 OC. If they don't kill the unit, it grows back. It's very hard for the opponent to flip points without actually killing these. So you'll see a lot of lists, particularly in Outlander Claw, but also as plugins into others that have a whole bunch of these. Outlander Claws with max Hand Flamers, Host with a lot of Hand Flamers, Brood Surge or Final Day will take quite a few Hand Flamers, as will Xeno Creed. And you're pushing these out early, pushing OC, they're skirmishing, they're killing off skirmishes, they're obnoxious, and if they aren't killed, they're going to put lots of OC on the points on a repeated basis, which means that the opponent then kills them, which means you then res them, you get them back in the game. They can drop down elsewhere, threaten behind the opponent, score you cards, continue to layer waves on. Some builds go completely in on resurrecting Handflamer Acolytes and just bringing back 5 of these across the game. You're effectively playing with 10 70-point mini rubric units at that point. Very, very effective, very, very tasty indeed. Next up, we have the Neophyte Hybrids. Now, as I say, these guys are in a slightly confused place now. They have a whole bunch of different weapon profiles, which means finding their exact role can be difficult. I think like a lot of GSC weapons, they are at their best hitting elite infantry because they have plenty of strength 6 guns, plenty of strength 12 guns, and lots of little chip shots. If you take them with the Benefictors for lethals or the Primus for rerolls, they can push a lot of damage through those targets. They can hurt vehicles, but you're relying on those mining lasers to go off. And ultimately, on the turn they drop in, you're hitting on 5s. So unless you've got the rerolls or the lethals or crit 5s from Host, it's a unit that is incredibly swingy. The Benefictors definitely does help smooth it out into things like, light vehicles. The real power of Neophytes is that they are idiots with OC2 who sticky objectives and who grow back. You can force the issue with Neophytes. It's nice to sticky your back objective with 10 of them, then shove them forwards. The opponent has to kill them. And if you jam them at the same time as jamming other threats, you've created a situation where if they don't kill through the full 10 wounds, and certain armies will feel a bit stretched doing that, the unit's going to grow back, you're going to flip points. Obviously, Host trades on massive drops with tons of these to charge, gum up the opponent, cover the board in OC, and win on the primary as the opponent drowns trying to claw their way out. They are at their most effective into high-quality, low-volume attack armies, stuff that really wants to batter things that are very expensive in Elite, and you just say, here are T3 bodies everywhere. You always want one squad, I think, in any detachment because the sticking objectives is just a nice threat to have. They can also screen out along your backfield for the first 3 turns till the opponent is come in and then push up forwards across the board. They're really good for that. But it's also, you'll see a lot of lists in Outlander Claw where the idea is you shove Goliath trucks on points with Neophytes in. It's a little bit like Catachans and Chimeras. It takes a lot of effort for the opponent to deal with that. It's dropping OC on the point the whole time. If they don't commit a lot to actually deal with that problem, you're going to score primary. So Neophytes in vehicles are a very solid way of giving you a primary bossing tool. Highly effective in that sense. The damage is wildly inconsistent. The mission play is always top-notch. So fair play to Neophytes. We still love you, even if you're not quite the killers you used to be. Next up, we have the Goliath truck. The humble Goliath truck is fantastic because GSC are not fast. So on the ground, the extra movement getting out of a truck is really, really useful. The truck helping you get to where you need to be is really useful. Firing deck 6, you can still activate guns out of it as well. Also really, really nice. It does have the fire support rule, so it can give you reroll wounds in a crucial turn against a target once you disembark. This is okay. I would say it's merely okay because a lot of the time I don't like to expose the Goliath truck. I'd rather keep it hidden somewhere, throw idiots out of it, put more idiots in, keep throwing them out of it. But I think a lot of lists in GSC trade well on having one or two of these just to ferry things around. They're particularly good in Outlander. I like them in Final Day. I like them in Brood Surge. But having some safe staging to throw out your units from is really, really imperative. And it's relatively tough and annoying for the opponent to shift. 10 wounds, 3 up save, T9 for 85 points. Very obnoxious. I do wish this was 10 points cheaper. I'd love to see that, but I think people are afraid of what might happen if it is cheaper. But I think a little bit of transport game in your GSC list is really, really useful and just helps make you more mobile on the board. GSC have a lot of sneaky ways to drop in, but actually a lot of good opponents won't let you get places from reserves, which means you need to have a way of pushing out in the early turns on foot. And the Goliath truck is a really good vessel for doing that. Next up, we have the Aberrants. I love the Aberrants. They are the coolest thing in GSC. They're why you play GSC. And they very much have a role in a number of the detachments. They are -1 to wound when led by a character. They have a 5 up feel no pain. They took some nerfs on that output. They have a bunch of strength 7 AP2 damage to attacks now. They are intensely durable into certain kinds of profiles. Damage 2 and damage 3 hates them because it just soaks up a disproportionate amount of effort to kill. And the T6 is very deceptively annoying as well, especially once -1 the wound gets involved. Aberrants are at their best when you can hit first with them, then absorb the pressure with the opponent, then counterattack whatever they've sent. You want to be getting the first blow in with Aberrants. Don't use them to draw the opponent onto you. Make sure you're getting the pressure attacks in, otherwise their value drops off. You can resurrect them in 5-mans, so I like lists that have 1 or 2 5-mans in because you can then potentially bring 2 more back, which is really, really nice into elite targets. They work really well with the Biophagus, where that strength 7 is suddenly wounding infantry on 2s. You've got lethal hits, lots of ways to buff that up in Hosts of Ascension. They also work really well with the Abominant, and obviously the Brood Surge, Aberrant, Abominant 5-mans were an absolute classic. It was a Danny Porter originally cooked that up. I obviously had a lot of success with it. I think Aberrants are a fantastic unit. You need to have a plan for delivery, which is why you don't see tons of them in the other detachments. 1 brick with an ingress or a transport works really well. In Brood Surge, you have good charge delivery tools, so you can ingress, charge, deliver, and also have 1 on the board. That helps you use the 3. Typically, though, they're quite a nice, expensive plugin. It is interesting. I've done some experimenting with, and so has Danny, with a 10-man, which obviously costs more, but gives you a once per game 10-man res potential as well. I don't love it. I feel like it shuts you out of other res pathways quite a lot. But there's no denying that a 10-man is very solid and gives you a real presence in one portion of the board. And obviously the fight on death 4 up from an Abominant goes a lot further on a 10-man unit as well. So I think using Aberrants as an anvil, if you're worried about solidity in GSC, Aberrants as an anvil is really nice, and I highly recommend trying either a 10-man with the Goliath truck or one of the delivery tools, or 5-mans. Next up, we have the Achilles Ridge Runner. This is probably the most important unit in the army at the moment. It has a very simple rule. When it hits an enemy unit in shooting, you get +1 AP against it. You can also equip it with a Survey Auger, which means when it hits an enemy unit in shooting, you also get removes cover. So I love 1 mortar with a Survey Auger sat at the back, dropping AP on, then other Ridge Runners that have mining lasers are going to shoot it to be shooting at AP4, ignoring cover. They slice through tanks without inruns like they're not even there. It's very, very funny. And they also help all your little GSC shooting level up by going to AP1 ignoring cover. Makes neophytes and hand flamers really dangerous. Finally, it also works in combat. So all your little AP1, AP2 claws go to AP2, AP3. Aberrants go to AP3. The Abominant goes to AP3. And this is a massive breakpoint for pushing damage through, even when the opponent has things like Armor of Contempt. Right? So I think Ridge Runners are absolutely crucial to the army. And in terms of the build, you'll always want one with a mortar that can screen the backfield, drop things on the opponent. And then it's really working out how important they are as a shooting piece. As I say, Outlander Claw lists at the moment are having lots of them with mortars, so you can just shell tons of stuff with Saboteurs and Ridge Runners from safety, whittle down the opponent's chaff, very good into things like Eldar or Guard. You can also run them with lasers. I think they're swingy at best with lasers, but they're very good into elite infantry because the blast on their heavy mining lasers suddenly takes up the number of shots quite substantially. They are very good in Final Day, where the +1 to hit from the Final Day rule gives them lasers that hit on 2s. Suddenly that consistency is there, and they slice through targets much more effectively. So I think in general, Ridge Runners, people swing in and out on. You want them with spotters if you have lasers, or the Survey Auger if you have a mortar. You're always going to have 1 or 2. Whether you need more is really a matter of taste, but I've seen a lot of different lists comboing them in different ways, either with the artillery to sort of layer on cheap chaff clearance from safety and AP from safety, or with some lasers to add a little bit of hard target removal or elite infantry bullying at range as well. Next up, we have the Atalan Jackals. Now, Jackals were really good in the index. They've dropped off a bit, but they do still serve a really important role. They are a Scout 9 bite unit, so that's a 21 scouting threat. And whenever they move near an opponent once per turn, they do basically an additional grenade. They have grenades, they can also do some sprinkling of grenades. So Jackals are a really good pressure piece. They love elves, where they can just sprinkle mortal wounds. They love sprinkling wounds on transports and tying them up, running in, pressuring the opponent, bogging them down at the start of a game. 21 inches and charge is a long way. And GSC often have good midboard presence. They are fragile. Their actual output is almost non-existent. The flamers are okay. The rest you're just hoping you might get some additional damage, but it's not likely. Their main use is in space control, right, as a sort of jackal jail type effect. And I have seen a couple of US lists using this with like 2 big bricks of jackals to go and push and cause pressure on the opponent from the start. Then as the opponent's trying to clear them, you drop in with your neophytes, your host of ascension, and make hay. I think there's probably more to be explored with Atalan Jackals than has been done. And I think they're actually a lot more effective than people necessarily give them credit for. In a meta with a lot of guardsmen and elves about, their relevance definitely comes back. I think their main weakness is that they're a go first unit. Like, they drop off a lot in their efficiency if they go second. It's well worth shouting out Outlander Claw, though, where they gain sticky objectives and an additional OC. They're a fantastic mission play unit in Outlander. It's nice to go first, sticky the midboard, either block the opponent off it or retreat, so they have to come to get it. Lots of play with that, and they're very, very effective in that detachment in particular. Next up, we have the Rocky G, the Goliath Rockrider. One of the coolest looking vehicles ever put out, in my personal opinion, because it's just a great big freight train of a thing with a great big blender on the front. Now, the Goliath Rockrider is deceptively good. Okay, I think you have to play with it a few times to really appreciate what it's bringing. It is a relatively tough transport that can fight and shoot. The opponent, if they get tied up in combat with it, except for monsters and vehicles, anything else, when it falls back, has to take a desperate escape test, and if you're battle shocked, it's at -1. So your opponent's going to lose stuff falling back from these if you get tied up in a sustained engagement. It's T10, so it packs a great tank shock. You can load it with the clearance incinerator, which gives you a great chaff clearance, gives you good overwatch, helps you clear off things it's fighting with. You can give it a demo charge cache, so it's just chucking out some extra damage too. I really like it with the heavy mining laser in Final Day, where it hits on 3s into NID boosted targets, so it's suddenly helping you with the anti-tank problem. But crucially, it has the drill dozer blade, so this is deceptively dangerous. It is 8 attacks, weapon skill 3, strength 10, AP2, damage 2. If you buff this with buff the target with Ridge Runner shooting, you tank shocked it, you actually do a deceptive amount of damage here. And this is not a transport you can simply tag, right? Because it's going to hurt things. It can duel very effectively with infantry. And the combination of tank shock and its attacks gets it through a surprising range of targets, whilst you have stuff inside also causing damage. As long as the meta doesn't pack too much by way of hard target removal at range, the Rockrider is really good. It helps you stage up and push, and it gives you a transport you can then harass the opponent with if they don't immediately come and deal with it. So I absolutely love them. I think they have a lot of application in a wide range of detachments. Just watch out for if the meta creeps up to having too much melter in it, because at that stage they really drop off. You don't want to lose it cheaply. It is 120 points. It's not cheap in and of itself, but you get a lot of application out of the Rockrider. There's a lot of different ways to play it, and it works in a whole bunch of different detachments. And GSC love transports because you're fragile. You've got to get there, guys. It's not an easy thing. So big shout out to the Rockrider. Next up, we have the Hybrid Metamorphs. Now, this is a unit that has seen a lot of use. Usually only 1 or 2, but you can mass them in Xenocrete. And it has a Blood Surge, where it can surge into an engagement range if it survives a shooting activation. Now, I don't tend to find this mattering much because Metamorphs die pretty quickly. It does also have Scout 6, which is a lot of fun on a vehicle. And this is something you can explore. So Metamorphs in a truck or Metamorphs in a Rockrider are going to help that yeet up the board with Scout 6, which means you can suddenly be in a very aggressive position with them and cause a lot of mayhem. They themselves have a bunch of damage to strength 5 attacks, AP1. You want to buff that. You definitely want to get it up to AP2 for it to be effective, but they also have hand flamers. So what you're essentially trading is you're losing the reroll wounds efficiency of the acolytes, you're losing some OC, but you're gaining a feel no pain, which makes you a bit more obnoxious. You're gaining Scout 6, which you can put to good use creeping into positions, and you're gaining marine killing weapons, essentially, right? The strength 5 is particularly nice for going through skirmisher type marines. The hand flamers are still effective, still annoying, just not quite as lethal as on the acolytes with the rerolls to wound. They have the icon, they can grow back as well, so they have that same thing of forcing the opponent to kill them. At the moment, with the resurrection mechanic, Metamorphs are as cheap to bring back as acolytes. which I think means that probably MSU Metamorphs merits some exploration. They're only 10 points more. I'd be interested to see lists that packed in more MSU 5-mans of Metamorphs to do a similar job, with a little bit more emphasis on killing 2 wound models, and making use of the scout for early pressure. I think there's definitely some play there. They're an obnoxious unit. A big 10-man with a Biophagus is no joke, especially in Brood Surge or getting the crit fires when it comes in hosts. Really, really slaps there. And I think you have a choice between MSU to boost your transport's movements, or you go for a 10 brick with a Biophagus, which is just a hammer unit in either host, Xeno Creed, or Brood Surge, where it's going to really do work there. You can combo it with the Locust as for a Fights First unit together, but as we discussed before, I just don't know that really works enormously well. Pure Strain Genestealers next. Now, these are endlessly useful for me. I've got a lot of fun out of Pure Strain Genestealers over this edition. They are a forward-deploying infiltrating unit. They have a bunch of Strength 4, AP2 damage 1 attacks. They can advance and charge. They're great for tying things up early in the game. They're great for screening out the mid-board. They hit well into things like scouts or cheap elf units, anything like. They'll kill 10 mans of guardsmen very happily. They are also quite easy to get back into the fight after they die. So if you have a couple of units of these, chuck them away, kill some things, resurrect them. They can come back from blips. The advance and charge gets them into the fight really quickly. So they're one of the ones that actually like the old blip system and work well with it. They're great with the Patriarch, but they work well on their own, especially in Brood Surge. But in general, having a little forward deploy unit that can go and harass enemy chaff is really useful. They're quick, they're cheap and cheerful, deceptively annoying to hurt with the 5-up inrun as well. And they can just buy you time by tying up the opponent and getting a block on as well. So Pure Strains, really, really useful. They work well in a whole bunch of the detachments. At 75 points, absolutely well worth it. And there's plenty of armies where actually bringing those back feels like a really good play to go and pick up their chaff and bully their low toughness units as well. That, guys, takes us through to the end. That is the first installment of the revised GSC 101. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to be able to build on this and give you some more in-depth tactics and guides on other things. And of course, I'd be very happy to get Danny Porter back on in the future as well and talk GSC. So if you're interested in particular things you'd like to see, let me know. Do leave a comment and I will work to build that for you. Thanks for supporting 6++. Please do hit the old like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. If you want to sign up and support us as a YouTube member, we'd love to have you. Come and join our massive community in our Discord. And of course, if you want to learn to play GSC with me, I'd be more than happy to coach you. Just send me a message via our Discord or leave a message on here. That's it for this time. Lowest of Men out. Bye-bye. Thank you.